Alrighty, I am talking with Michael Ashcroft today. We are doing a bit of an experiment. I have been navigating the self-employment journey for the last 3+ years and connected with many people, including people like Michael on Twitter, who is contemplating taking his own leap. I think he is on his way to making a leap, and we thought it'd be fun to document what the journey looks like. So I want to talk with Michael today before he's taking his leap, as he's preparing, how he's thinking about it, what he's afraid of. And then we're going to do another interview maybe before he takes the leap and then after, and kind of see what changed, what evolved. So welcome to this experiment podcast episode exploration, Michael.
Thank you very much. It's going to be good fun, I think, to have different snapshots of this journey that I'm going on, particularly given that we're kind of doing this, almost in secret from the rest of the world at this point. And then in future, it'll all come out at once. It should be good fun.
Talk to me about your like narrative. What is your story? Who are you today?
I guess there's a couple of ways into this, different perspectives on the same narrative. I'll give you the conventional professional one first, and then we can dig a bit deeper. So right now, I am an engagement manager at KPMG. I work in infrastructure advisory, working for many clients in the energy system, how they navigate their transition to what we call net zero carbon emissions, which is a big initiative in the UK, part of the decarbonisation plan. I've been working for the last 10 years in energy system innovation, studied physics, all that kind of thing. So it's a very quite mainstream seeming. I can attach it to things like, innovation is just a green spaces. This is part of my narrative. I've always been the guy who's worked on climate change type things. Now, at the same time, there's a kind of secret life on the side that's, I guess, quite public on Twitter, so it's not that secret, but it's secret from the people at work, which is that I'm also a life coach. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher. I'm particularly interested in stuff like undoing coercion as we apply it to ourselves, helping unlock the innate capacities that we have. And I really think that as we scale up the undoing that we've placed on ourselves, that would unlock much broader and more effective capacities within ourselves that are currently being impeded by different kinds of programming. So that's the other half that I'm working on the side at the moment and hope to branch out into one day.
So when did this secret personality start to emerge?
I mean, there's always been the secret side personality. It's just kind of had different shapes over the years. I guess I started the Alexander Technique training when I was 26, so in 2014. I didn't know where it would go. It was just like a hobby that I just kept going back to. And as I progressed up the corporate ladder, I found myself kind of enjoying it less and less. I had a burnout experience around when I turned 30, 31. And ever since then, I've not really recovered. So I think I haven't really healed from that.
And how old are you now?
I'm 32. So it was when I turned 30 and burnt out, basically, pretty much the same time.
So what do you mean by burnout? My working hypothesis is that when people are talking about burnout, they are really talking about something that is like a disconnect, right? There's some part that was either believing the narrative of a career mindset or who they were as a person, and then something kind of breaks, right? Some people have described it as like the soul, right? You're realizing the soul has been numbed. And then burnout is really the slow kind of like, this would be like the David White view of things. What is burnout for you?
So my experience was quite stark. I'd been working pretty intensely for about four months, kind of the 70, 80-hour week mark, which basically just means kind of go home, turn the laptop on, weekend, turn the laptop on kind of thing. I didn't have to, but there was, for various reasons, I kind of felt like I should. At the same time, my girlfriend at the time was in a similar kind of place, just working all the time. So we were both kind of encouraging this mutual constant working. and that affected our relationship. And then one morning, I kind of just woke up and I was basically dissociated. Um, so I was looking at my laptop and it didn't make sense conceptually. I was looking at a bright screen of colors and shapes, but I couldn't make sense of the meaning behind any of these things. So I was just looking at, literally like not emails, but like shapes of letters, and I couldn't go beyond that. And that I went to the doctor and I didn't know what was going on. It was quite scary. And that actually took me a few weeks to get back to a kind of sensible baseline, and then a few months to get back to kind of workable baseline. And I still think that in the work context, I now have a kind of shield mechanism that prevents me from really fully engaging, because I know that that's possible. So I'm still at kind of
Wow.
75% capacity all the time in the corporate office. That kind of, in my own stuff, I'm fine. But in that context, there's a kind of a handbrake is still on a little bit.
Wow. Um, what have people noticed at work?
So I've changed jobs since then. That was my old employer. People definitely noticed at the time because I had to say things. I think in my current position, people probably think this is my perception, that I'm a little bit lazy, that I'm not kind of playing the game that they're all playing, because they often will work stupid hours,
Right.
from my perspective, um, or that I just have very firm boundaries, which is true, I do. So either they think I'm mature with my energy, or they think I'm a slacker. It's hard to tell. We don't really talk about this stuff particularly openly.
How have you made sense of that experience? What is, because I think a big part of, I had probably not as an acute burnout situation, but I resonate with almost being frozen,
Mm,
right? And I really had to kind of understand where that came from for me. For me, it was I had kind of become a person I didn't like. And that scared me so deeply that I was almost frozen to continue.
mm,
Um, like I was so scared to keep going to find out what would happen to me. Like I
mm,
was giving over power to the system. And that was kind of the trigger. I like had to escape. And I didn't have as much of a plan. And we'll talk about what your plan is. But what's been the narrative for you for like sense making of that?
I feel like it was a message from a part of me that knows or knew better than the rest of me knew at the time. Kind of, this is not the path. And I've always dreamed of having a portfolio career, being free of that structure of employment, but I wasn't really doing anything towards it materially. And then this happened, and I just suddenly realized that I'd never forecast myself 5 years into the future and thought, yeah, I want my boss's job, or I want their boss's job. I'd never wanted that. And this was just a kind of being hit around the face by myself kind of reminder of, hey, I'm going to make you suffer for a while so that you finally take this thing seriously. And it's been drawn out. It's lasted a few years of long dark night of the soul kind of thing, which I now think I'm emerging from. There's that kind of like identity conflict was definitely quite a strong one.
Yeah, one thing that jumps out with the things you're creating, I think you're sharing things around the Alexander technique. I think you're sharing things around writing, your
Mm,
own journey of making sense of what happened. And I just get a sense of seriousness with what you're writing about. Like, this matters. Like, this stuff matters, right? And I think that is really impressive to see because there's so many things pushing people to not share, to
mm,
not put themselves out there, and like just to keep people like people are happier if people kind of don't make noise, just put their head down and go with the flow.
mm.
Um, do you does that resonate with how you've kind of thrown yourself into all these things you're creating?
Yeah, very much so. And it wasn't planned. It's been entirely emergent. So last year I took building a second brain and then went through a passage about this time last year. And I realized that I could share my process. And by sharing my process, I discovered my process. I discovered what works and what I like, and all this stuff just kind of happened by itself. If I couldn't have coached myself into this, I think. And similarly, with the Alexander technique stuff, it's probably the worst thing you could pick if you wanted to create a kind of online business thing. It's there's no language around it that makes any sense. It's niche, it's obscure, it's terribly named, and it's almost like a wordless experience anyway, even in person. So I would not have picked this, and yet here I am, because it just kind of it kept coming up, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I like this. I'll just see what happens, and then here I am about to launch a course on it. But I didn't kind of think, oh, I'm going to do a course on Azan technique. It just kind of kept coming up as like, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that resonates with me. I think my approach has been, how do I go as slow as possible while still listening to the signals, right? There's all this
Nice.
tendency to be, you have to make money, you have to scale, you have to take advantage of every opportunity. And I see those opportunities and I kind of just block it, say,
Mm,
okay, not yet. All right, I need to hear from a few more people. And then people start saying, okay, this is resonating. And then that's kind of my own cue to say, okay, is this something I want to actually do? All
yeah.
right, I'm going to focus on it. Um, so it seems like these things are resonating with people. You've started to make money doing things on the side, which I
I
think is a
have. Yeah.
huge first step for people. I made a little bit of money on the side doing random things, but even that just gave me confidence that I could make money in a non-paycheck way, that
Mm.
like it was possible. So where are you on your journey and what do you see as next, even if you don't have set timelines?
Yeah, it's a funny one because I can see myself holding on to both identities at once, and the old one hasn't let go yet. Um, so right now where I am is I spent the last couple of months doing these taster calls with people from around Twitter, which has been great. Done about 30 now, and I operated them on a generosity model, so pay what you want kind of thing. Um, I think it's more than $1,000 now people have donated, which is just amazing, given that I didn't necessarily charge them for this. It's just they wanted to give me contribution. I'm also coaching people, so I've got 3 or 4 clients who I coach in my evenings, kind of the 8 p.m. UK thing for people in the US, which is great. And I'm building this online course based on the calls I've done. Which it kind of just reproduces the structure of the call and is designed basically to kind of remove the need for me to be there, because I now have lots of people who want the call, but I haven't got time for that. So my plan is to launch that, and do some coaching at the same time and have that support me on an ongoing basis. In terms of timelines, I'm a little bit caught up because like there's certain dates at KPMG where, oh, your sign-on bonus will release itself at this date. The annual
Right.
bonus is on this date. There are these projects going on, and honestly, in the context of haven't yet proven that I have a thing to jump to, expensive flat here in London, and old identities, the actual quitting moment is a terrifying prospect. It's fine to build stuff on the side, and that's kind of fun, but then like it suddenly becomes real, and that's not quite there yet. But I have a provisional date of end October for when I resign in my mind.
Yeah, I found that most people I know, there's no perfect date. The way
Mm,
the corporate world is set up is there's almost always a looming deadline in which you'll get more money,
yeah,
even just the monthly paycheck or
yeah.
weekly or however it's paid, right? It can be so big that it's like, okay, another month I'll save this, another month I'll save this. There's no like right moment. I'm the
Mm,
worst person to take advice from. I left after like 2.5 years, and if I just stayed, I would have made another bonus and another kept some of my sign-on bonus, which was pretty sizable. But yeah, so October. Um, what what are you uh, like afraid of?
I'm afraid that the whole thing won't work. Even though I have now plenty of proof points, I've built a lot before taking the leap. I guess I'm afraid that for some reason this whole thing is an illusion in some way.
Hmm.
I think a bigger fear, though, actually, is that whatever it is that's stopping me from performing highly and enjoying my corporate jobs will show up in the side thing, if you like. So currently, it's not my job; it's a hobby. Therefore, it's fun and free and easy. But suddenly, when I have to support myself with coaching and courses and freelance consulting or whatever else it might be, I'll feel like that coercion element again and kind of resist, and then suddenly find myself without a regular paycheck, or sick leave or whatever else to fall back on if I need it. So I think that's probably one of the big fears as well.
Yeah, and that's real. I think I've experienced both. Um, I think a general feeling of this might not work. What happens if I can't support myself doesn't really go away, but I've almost come to see it as a feature. I've kind of tamed it a little, but I see it as a feature now. It's basically reminding me that I am responsible for my life in a way that I didn't get as a paycheck employee.
Mm.
Um, Even though I was just kind of a little blind to it,
Yeah.
right? Um, you can get fired, but from like knowledge jobs, it's not that easy. Like you need to put in a little effort to get fired.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, it'd be quite impressive at this point to get fired, I think.
And the second fear, that's a hard one too. I think that's something I've really been afraid of. I'm constantly talking about this with my wife too. It's like we can't create jobs for ourselves.
Mm.
We need to keep this playful, fun, engaging, and aligned with like the things we actually want to keep doing. For me, I'm willing to compromise a lot of money to
Mm.
make sure that happens. Not pursue consulting projects that could pay me more, make me feel more financially secure, not pursue things at a faster rate that might make things more stable. Have you ever gone through the exercise of so I have two statements I typically have people go through when they're about to take a leap to freelance is
Mm.
like and you fill out these statements. It's like I am um, still a good person as long as I earn X this year. Have you gone through that mental exercise? So you're already
I've
breathing a little
not.
heavy.
I've not. Yeah, no, I haven't. I think I have some implicit beliefs in there.
Yeah.
And I think from what I've been saying to friends and family, I've been kind of benchmarking against my base salary currently, which is silly because that's a fairly large number. Um, but it's kind of how many coaching clients or sales of coaching of courses would I have to do to meet that number? That's kind of where my benchmark is. It's not coming down. It's, no bonus, no annual leave, no healthcare, whatever. But it's still benchmarked against my current number that hits my account every month, if you like. That isn't sustainable. I think that'll have to come down for a while, and if it goes up again, then cool. But I need to make that adjustment.
Yeah, well, that's why I like the exercise because you actually
Mm.
have to write it down. And if you're about to write your former salary, you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other statement is how many months are you comfortable going without earning an income?
Yeah. Okay. I haven't done that one either. I've thought about it, and honestly, it's not long without any income. I think this is why I've been putting so much work into building up stuff on the side, because I mean, my background is not particularly wealthy, and I've only been earning highly for a couple of years. I was at high cost, so my savings is fine. I could last like a year if I sold everything, um, but I don't want to do that because it took me so long to get here. It took me 10 years of working to get to a point where I could last one without working. Um, I don't want to go another 10 years, have to earn one more year off, if you like.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I do have quite high money anxiety on that if I look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think so. The way I looked at it was I worked backwards and I said, okay, what is my life cost? What does a good life cost? And then I said, okay, and this was when I was in New York. So it was actually pretty high, but it was a
Mm,
lot less than what I was making.
mm,
And I said, okay, this is what the life cost. I have that much in savings. This will give me
mm.
about a year of this life. And if I don't earn any money, this is kind of an investment in just life, like
Yeah.
living. Um, and then when I left, I actually dramatically lowered my cost of living. So that got extended.
Mm,
And then I started to make money and I said, okay, now it's like, let's keep this going for 5 years.
right.
But I think when you're in your shoes, you're very just like the first 3 months are going to be terrifying.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, Like how are you prepping for that or thinking about it?
So I guess there's a few big things that are aligning kind of naturally. So I rent a nice one bed place in London. The contract ends in April, which is roughly when, if I were to stay until my bonus, which I probably won't do, then it would be the same time. So at that point, I wouldn't renew. Obviously, I wouldn't take on another 2 year expensive contract. I'd go somewhere else, and it just brings up all of this. Oh, I'm quitting my 10-year job, my career, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaving my home for the last 3 years, and then what? So I think what I'm doing is just building up enough of a picture of what looks like, and enough of a financial buffer. I could totally quit now, forego those 2 bonus points, and just hope for the best, and it'll be fine probably. But I am finding myself kind of build up an emergency fund. I use YNAB, like how many months ahead can I fill up all my budget categories, if you like? How much revenue can I already get from coaching? How many, like, can I get a course out there and prove already that I'll generate this much money? All of these things before I let myself do this, even though I know I could do it now and probably survive.
Yeah. And would people help you if you ran out of money?
Yeah, totally. But there's a feeling there of failure in that,
Yeah.
isn't there? What
That's
I
weird, right? That we think of that as failure.
Yeah, because it's like, if I'm going to take such a big risk and leap and then fall flat on my face, that kind of implies I didn't think it through, or that I'd let go of, particularly in a pandemic, right? I mean, people are being laid off left, right, and center. My colleagues are very much like, we're very lucky to have jobs, we're very safe and protected from all this stuff, and you're going to quit in the middle of this.
Mm.
Um, it's very easy to then kind of look back and think, well, that was dumb, wasn't it? And I guess I want to avoid finding myself in a situation where I didn't give myself enough runway, I didn't think it through enough, and I end up just having to come back to another job that I didn't necessarily want, because it didn't work out.
Yeah. And are are you still with the partner you were with when you had the burnout experience?
No, that didn't last.
Okay.
Partly because of that whole experience. It
Yeah.
was difficult to come back from that. I have a girlfriend now, and she would help me out. I can move with her if I wanted to, I guess. I also just don't want to be in a position. I don't want to, like, say, oh look, I'm now a freelance, unemployed course creator. Um, Please, can I just live on your sofa or like just eat your
Yeah.
food? I don't
Right.
want to be that guy.
Yeah, I think it's been incredibly helpful to one make friends.
Mm,
And I think it's something you probably have done better than I did. Um, I think there's a better ecosystem around doing what you're about to do now than there was 3 or 4 years ago. And then I met my partner, now my wife, in Taiwan when I was traveling and trying to make
mm,
sense of the uncertainty and the unknown. And before I had started kind of creating things. And it's been so helpful just to have somebody to kind of talk to about the
yeah,
uncertainty. She's doing a very similar thing that I'm doing. She's
yeah.
probably closer to kind of maybe like 6 months ahead of where you are. But yeah, that's been super helpful. And how are you thinking about just your friendships and like your current friends who are gonna probably, I imagine most of your friends will stay in the corporate world for the rest of their life. How are you
Yeah.
thinking about that, new friendships, how you want to live in the future, or are these just things you don't want to think about because they're too uncertain and stressful?
I am thinking about it. I guess I'm fortunate that most of my friends in London are actually, like, they're international. They're
Oh
not
wow.
they're not
Yeah.
British. So Italian, my girlfriend's French. Most of my friends are from Europe actually. Um, which means that there's always been this idea in my mind that they might just go home at any point. It's very much like being from nowhere rather than being from here kind of vibe in my life. Um, and at the same time, I think I don't know, for some reason, the generation that I am, we are, growing up with the internet, making friends online isn't impossible. Like, there's a way of doing it. We're having a conversation because of we had various touch points. We reached out, and that was good. So I'm making loads of friends via Twitter, plenty who I met in real life as well. And I kind of have this confidence now that that could just carry on. And I would meet new people when life restructures. So I'd hang on to the old friends who I'm going to stay in touch with. Some will fall away, um, and others will be kind of emerge, and that's fine. But I guess, as you were saying, when you did this, there was no ecosystem of this part of Twitter, shall we call it, where you can kind of trust that that exists. So I guess you're kind of more alone in your journey than I would be going into it now. So
Yeah.
that feels very different.
Yeah. I met, um, I found out about Kehi. I don't know if you know
Mm, yeah,
him, but
follow him. Yeah.
about, what was it, 6 months after I left at a conference. And then I read
Cool.
his story and I was like, oh my God, there are more humans like me who blew
Yeah.
up a life that made sense. And it was such a key part to my journey. And I think there's a shared vulnerability when I
Mm,
talk to other self employed people. It's like, oh, hey, you don't know what the future looks like for your life, too. So let's form a deep friendship just in case we actually need each other.
yeah.
But in a genuine way. It's not like a understanding. Whereas, like, full time paid knowledge work is a very, very unique setup in history.
Mm,
People are making enough such that they almost don't have to rely on any relationships to get their needs.
yeah.
Um, did you find that change as you started to make more money?
Oh, interesting. So I can now live on my own, which was a big change from earlier on when I had to share either with friends or with partners. Um, yeah, actually, I have found that, and I can see it continuing. That the more I earn, the more I could become insular, the more I could rely on food delivery services and just kind of stop doing the things that make humans human. Um, and of course, when you do that, the time available kind of easily fills up with more work. So you earn more such that you can pay for someone to clean your house, that you can pay for someone to make meals for you, that kind of thing. And you realize that you're part of this. It's not quite the rat race, but you're paying for things that you wouldn't otherwise need if you didn't do the job you were doing. Um, so it's interesting to see how that will unwind itself as well. Um, Suddenly, when the opportunity for connection with people, the opportunity to do more things for myself will reemerge.
What's your prediction for how you think this will go for you?
I'm quietly confident, actually. There's a couple of big unknowns. So I don't know what my living situation will look like, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. But I feel like I've proven enough to myself now through side experiments, and I have enough of a following, for example, um, that I can survive for long enough. And once I've let go of the job situation, I have a suspicion that a whole bunch of energy will get unlocked, and I'll just start doing things and creating things and talking to people and going to places and whatever else that I cannot fundamentally imagine right now. And it'll be that stuff that shapes my life going forward. And what I'm doing now is a kind of, I want to keep coaching, I want to keep making courses, I want to keep teaching Amazon technique, but it's not all I want to do. And I'm curious, like, what else will show up, and that's why I'm doing this. It's in service of that guy that I'm doing all this, I think.
Yeah, it's I read this book, Rebecca Solnit's book, A Field Guide to Getting Lost.
Nice.
And I think one thing that like knocked me away was her quote is, the thing that nature of which is totally unknown to you is usually what you need to find. And
Mm.
finding it is a matter of getting lost.
Oh, that's
And
great.
it's so good. And I don't think anything captures what happened to me better than that. Um, but I became lost without the intention of getting lost.
Mm.
And I feel so lucky that that happened to me.
Yeah.
And that is so hard to articulate. And I think it's so cool that there are people that are talking about these things now, and you're kind of going into it knowing that you might get lost, but there could be
Yeah.
something cool on the other side. I have this
Yeah.
model of taking a leap, which is um, a lot of people struggle at work and have this desire to escape. And that's kind of like the certain pain, right? And then leaving on your own is like this uncertain pain,
Mm.
right? Um, and most people are going to choose the certain pain over the uncertain pain. And that makes perfect sense. But the only thing that tips the scales to go towards the uncertain pain is if you pair it with a certain sense that you might find something interesting.
Mm. Yeah.
And it sounds like that's where you are now, which is really cool.
Yeah, I've always had this, we'll call it an implicit sense of you should just do this. Don't ask why, just believe me and you'll find out when you get there, kind of thing. That's how I went into Alexander technique. I had my first session and found it baffling. But I was like, oh, this is really important, keep going. You'll find out later why this is important. And I think now I am. Maybe I will even more in a few years' time. So I definitely have learned to trust that mechanism. And at the same time, I think for your model, if you've experienced the kind of the pain of the certain pain in a certain perspective, and suddenly you realize that it's intolerable over your entire working life. It's like, oh, it's this every day for 40 years, if not worse, because I'll be moving up, getting more responsibility, more stressed. And you just think, no, no, I don't want that. Thank you very much. I'll go and explore the uncertain pain and the uncertain benefits, but I can't keep doing the known pain in this way and then look back and think, well, I wish I hadn't done
Awesome. So we will check in the future, maybe in October. Maybe we could talk like the day after
that.
you walk out of work and see what happens.
All right, I will let you know when that is. Thank you so much.